Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of New Covenant Conversations. I'm Scotty, of course, and
Ayanna.
this podcast, and let me correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ayanna, but I believe that me and you share the belief that only Jesus, that they call Jesus Christ or Yeshua, which was his Jewish name, is following him and his teachings is the key to salvation, and believing in his death and resurrection
Mm-hmm.
for our sins. And that's the only thing that's key in the quote unquote Bible. Um, the four gospels, what is it? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That if you just study those, that establishes the new covenant made through Jesus. Would
Yeah,
you agree?
it's essentially the New Testament, but excluding Paul's teaching and
And everything else, the
yeah.
other stuff. And so that's what I believe. A lot of people want to focus on other parts of the Bible. She mentioned Paul. A lot of people preach Paul. Paul has a controversial history and wasn't accepted by everyone during his own time as a self-appointed apostle who was a former Pharisee under the law and was actually persecuting and
Mhm.
implicated in the murder of what they name as one of the first Christian martyrs, which was Stephen, and what have you. So a lot of people lean a lot on Paul, and also the Old Testament, the Torah, and or we call it the Old Testament. Jews call it the Torah, and it's just one of their many different um, books of religious books. We'll just call them. So, but anyway, now, getting into the subject matter of why we're going to do this podcast, and again, we solicit other people's opinions or any questions that you may have. You can just leave them in the comment wherever you're watching this video. All right. So Ayanna had said something to me that made me think about some stuff, and Ayanna was telling me that it's some groups out there that believe that the Torah is really where it talks about God or using these different names for God, that the God that established the law through Moses allegedly is really Satan. And can you tell
Yes.
me where tell us where you heard that from and explain it as best you can?
Well, I mean, I just, sometimes I go on YouTube and, type in questions that I might have, and a lot of different theologies will pop up, and even, like people condemning other theologies that other preachers have introduced in these mega churches and things of that nature. But one of the popular trending subjects at one time were a lot of people debating as to, that the God in the Old Testament is not, in fact, the same God that is in the New Testament, which is, something that is a very unpopular opinion in this thinking. Like,
It's not mainstream.
yeah, it's not mainstream at
Hmm.
all. Most preachers probably would be like, no, ma'am. So,
Okay, so it's a controversial debate that some people are having. Now, what that got me to thinking, to even think about if it's any truth to that, is that when you read the stories from the Torah, you will find that you'll find stories about genocide, okay, where God allegedly told these Hebrew Israelites, the descendants of Abraham, Jacob, and whoever the promises was made to go and kill all these different groups. And some of the groups, I looked it up, and this is just a few. It was a whole bunch of group of people that, if you believe that the story about the Hebrews being enslaved in Egypt, and building the pyramids, if you believe that story, then as they were making their way from there, were in the wilderness for 40 years, and then came into um, what's known as present day Palestine and other areas of Northeast Africa, and telling them to just kill these people and take their stuff. And some of those groups are, let me see if I can find it right quick. Okay, here's the groups. So I did some research, and what it came up with was, in the Old Testament there are various instances where God is portrayed as instructing the Israelites to engage in warfare against different peoples inhabiting the land of Canaan. Some of the groups mentioned include Canaanites, And a lot of people say these are like black people, like African
The
people.
descendants of Ham.
That's what some people say. The
Yeah.
Amalekites, um, and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, which is engaged in one of these genocides, cited this particular Bible passage. And again, Israel is the only quote unquote Jewish state in the world. And so what that means, their official religion is Judaism. A lot of people would tell you United States official religion is Christianity, but they will be telling you a lie because we have a secular government and nowhere is that stated in our Constitution. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, Israel is a Jewish state. And so Torah is that teachings and stuff is Judaism. And these are the people they claim they are descended from, even though that's not true either. But we're not going to get into that on this particular podcast. But he was giving the story of the Amalekites and saying that this justifies us just bombing all these Palestinians, wipe them out, kill them, and take possession of their property. So to me, when people say, and let me go with the other
as
names.
was done in the Old Testament.
Well, the Old Testament is the Torah.
Yes, yeah.
The Old Testament is Judaism. It's part of Judaism. It's
a cultural norm that has been for centuries for you to go in and wipe out whoever has what God says is yours. What is God ordained for them. They use genocide as a means of God. God wants them to do genocide,
or to use God as justification for
yes,
that's
genocide. What I was trying to say, justification.
But some of the groups, it just gave me 7 groups. There's many more though. Some of the groups mentioned include the Canaanites, the Amalekites, the Amorites, the Hittites, Perizzites, the Hivites, and Jebusites, or whatever. These groups are often cited in the context of the Israelites' conquest of the so-called Promised Land, as described in the biblical books of Exodus, Numbers, Joshua, and Judges. And so, you got any thoughts on that? It was other groups, but it's basically God told. Getting back to what you were saying, let me gather my thoughts. Getting back to what you were saying, didn't white people from Europe use that justification, even beginning with the church, the so-called church, the Catholic Church, was the financial backer and gave his blessings to all of those quote-unquote New World expeditions, to Christopher Columbus and the others that followed him across the sea, the Atlantic, into the America, South America, Central America, North America, Canada, all the way to Alaska. You know what I'm saying? And just exterminated and committed genocide against indigenous people. And in their Sunday worship, preachers gave sermons justifying this treatment. Just like you had preachers who justified, so-called Christian preachers who justified the enslavement of African Americans, and saying the white man was, everybody else, the non-white people are the beast of the earth and we're the only true, again, the term chosen people. You got any thoughts on what I said?
Well, since we're talking about the Torah and everything, you would, naturally want to question, like, why would God be that way? Why would God allow people to commit genocide against people and this, that, and the third?
And steal their stuff.
And steal and pillage and kill children. Like, why would God allow that? And really, even in the Torah, you read Job, and God is justified in all his ways, and how dare you even ask and try to think the way that God does. That is basically how Job is summed up when God finally answers him. But Job repents and was like, oh, I can't, my thoughts are not like yours and everything.
Well, you giving them a fragment of our earlier conversation. So my question was, and I had put this to some other people, now God is described as a just God, right? Meaning believing in justice and
but we see so much injustice
throughout the Torah,
through the earth. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and even committed by people who follow the quote unquote Holy Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Which includes the Torah and then the New Testament. But again, I want to make clear I am a Christian and I believe that the only thing central to me obtaining everlasting life is my belief in the death and resurrection of Yeshua and following his teachings. And he made it simple for everybody, but he said, love love God with all your heart, God the Father with all your heart. And and it's said many different ways
I want to
or a
add
few ways,
to
but
Yeshua, because if you go to the New Testament and those books that we talked about, somewhere in
Matthew,
there,
Mark, Luke, and John.
yes, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, somewhere in there, Jesus is teaching in parables, and he said, if your brother steals from you,
Mm-hmm.
or if he slaps you, turn the other cheek, or give him your cloak. That's not what you see in the Old Testament. That's
Mm-hmm.
two totally different things. That's why they're like,
Well,
how.
that's what I was getting to. So the golden, they're known as the golden rules, and there's other religions that have golden rules that are very similar. And the first golden rule, as I stated, was to love God with all your heart. The second golden rule is to love your neighbor as you would love yourself, or treat other people the way you want to be treated. So if God don't never change, why would he tell one group of people to go kill, steal, everything that you gave to Moses in so-called the Ten Commandments and told him not to do, but you justifying
Mm-hmm.
this happening there? But so is that how? That's not what would Jesus do? Remember that was a big thing, and people were selling stuff.
Yeah.
With what would Jesus do on it? What was it? WWJD. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? And so, well, if you love people, if you acting in love, you're not gonna steal from them. You're not gonna kill from them. You're not gonna covet what they have. And when you look at all of the abuses, of whether we're talking about how women have been treated throughout history, how indigenous people have been treated throughout history, how non-white people in other parts of the world have been treated by these white people saying that they Christians, these nations and stuff, and condoned or sponsored by the church of their days,
Mm.
supposedly reading these same scriptures and what have you. And I believe that that's why the Old Testament or Torah was included, because the Catholic Church, the one who created the Bible, they picked what ancient writings. Look, people, when Jesus died, there was not, no Bible. You know what I'm
Mm-mm.
saying? Until Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the disciples who was with him, wrote about what their experiences and what Jesus taught. All the other stuff was part of Jewish culture, Jewish teachings, Jewish law. So you were a Jew if you were following that. So I believe the Catholic Church and the Council of Nicaea, and then later, even when the Protestants broke away from the Catholic Church, they still held on to the Old Testament in the Torah and used its teachings to justify them dominating other people and taking their stuff. They view themselves. They even started uh uh making images and paintings, commissioning people like what?
Michelangelo,
Michelangelo
yeah.
to commission people to depict these non-white people in the non-white area of the world as whites. So what I'm saying is white supremacy. I see white supremacy all throughout
The
the
Bible.
Torah, and not because the people may have been white, but how they're conducting themselves. That's how white people for the last centuries, since they took over the world, and they justify it through the Bible,
Yeah,
the
that's
Old Testament. But I never hear them using the words of Jesus to justify none of that.
no. Which, kind of makes me question, like, I've always felt once I came of age to understand that Jesus was not white. Like, I did not know that growing up,
Mm-hmm.
going to a Baptist church for 12 years, from a child up to 12 years, up to 16, really. I didn't know Jesus wasn't white. No one had ever said, "Oh, all these people in the Bible are black people." That is not what I grew up for decades knowing.
But I don't think they told you they were white either, though. at the church you
No,
went
no,
to.
it was assumed that he was white from depictions, and because you go to church, they're going to picture Jesus at some
So
point
the
in
church that
time.
you was going to with your granny,
Was a black church.
but they had white depictions of Christ. I don't
Yes,
remember because I've
yes, they
never been
did.
one to really go to church like that
I
once I
mean, from
came
it
of age.
being coloring books or whatever. I mean,
Okay.
it's
So this wasn't
depictions,
a
the
conscious
stain.
black church.
I wouldn't say that it was at all, considering what happened to the church. But yeah, I ignorant for a long time. Didn't know that the Bible had 52 books and not just the ones that are here.
I think the
Didn't know
Ethiopian Bible got more.
it does. Didn't know that the Council of Nicaea consisted of a bunch of Greeks who,
White people, we would call them
yes,
today.
yes, didn't know that the Catholic Church is what really governed this book. The Catholic Church
Right.
governed the Bible, and we all depict them
I feel
to be
like
more wicked now.
I feel like the mainstream church today is the Pharisees and Sadducees that Jesus was rebuking, talking about putting rules and regulations on people that you can't even keep yourself. You're not keeping yourselves, and you're putting on these airs and these costumes and fine adornments and stuff like that, and basically putting
And
yourself
demanding
above the people.
sacrifice.
Yeah, and so it's just something to think about, people. And if you got any thoughts on this, please drop a comment. We may answer your question if it's respectful on the next episode. But I think it's a very interesting subject. Again, I say that my faith, what makes me a Christian, and I'm even thinking I don't even know if I want to be called a Christian, because the people who have gone by that name have committed many crimes, throughout history. Yeah. Oh, before we leave, I did do some research, and I asked this question. From the perspective of international law in the Geneva Conventions, the violent conquest and displacement of indigenous peoples, as described in passages of the Old Testament, would be considered grave violations of human rights and humanitarian law. Here's how these actions might be interpreted today. Number one, a genocide, the deliberate killing of members of a specific ethnic or religious group, as described in some instances of conquest in the Old Testament, would unequivocally be considered genocide under international law. Again, you got people in the Zionist movement, whether they be white Christians or whether they be people in the Israeli government, like Benjamin Netanyahu, using what they're doing to justify killing these people and taking their land and property. It also says the intentional destruction of a group in whole or in part is strictly prohibited by the United Nations Genocide Convention. 2, crimes against humanity, the systemic or widespread attack directed against a civilian population, such as the conquest and destruction of entire cities and communities, could constitute crimes against humanity. These include acts such as murder, extermination, deportation, and persecution as outlined in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. 3, war crimes, the indiscriminate violence and destruction inflicted upon civilian populations during armed conflict, as described in accounts of conquest, talking about in the Bible, will likely be classified as war crimes. This includes attacks on civilians, destruction of civilian property, and the forced displacement of populations, all of which are prohibited by the Geneva Conventions and additional protocols. And the last one, 4, violation of the right to self-determination. The forcible displacement and dispossession of indigenous peoples from their ancestral lands will also contravene their fundamental right to self-determination as recognized by international law. Indigenous people had the right to maintain their cultural traditions, territories, and identities. And again, what throughout history, what have we read about how we're going to civilize the heathens and introduce them to God, and calling them pagans, and they're doing this and that, and they use it to justify they killing them. Oh, it's like saying we killing these people for their own good.
That's awful.
It's sick, man. It's
I
really
actually
sick.
feel like, I've read a good bit of the Old Testament and everything. So I kind of genetically, these are descendants of great ancestors would be Jacob and Esau, who were twins, I believe. And when Jacob had went away to marry Rachel to the ancestral home of, I think it was Abraham,
Mhm.
I think it was Abraham and Sarah. And he came back. He expected for his brother to kill him and not welcome him back home, but instead that he did welcome him back home. And Jacob did not slaughter the descendants of Esau. So I don't know what's up with them refusing as ancestral cousins, I guess,
Mhm.
to let these people be and live.
But
Oh, but you said they're not even the real Jews though. So they're
no,
not
no, I'm
even.
not saying that. I'm not
Oh.
saying that. I'm saying that the Europeans from America, Canada, Australia, Eastern Europe, all those are white people. When you look at them, you know what a white person look like, and you know what a non-white person look like. Do any of these people we see on TV calling themselves saying that they are Jews? I'm not saying that they not,
Mm-hmm.
but Jews denotes that you practice a religion. That's what Jew mean. It
Mm-hmm.
don't mean a phenotype or a race.
Mm-hmm.
Race was not yet invented. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying? But these people are white who maybe had somebody like a recent, not like ancient, going back thousands and thousands of years, that they can trace their lineage back to Abraham or anybody like that, but they adopted, they became just like I became a Christian when I accepted Jesus Christ.
Oh, okay.
You see what
Yes,
I'm
I
saying?
understand.
And they became Jews when they are born into that culture,
Mm-hmm.
and they practice their Jew. They don't practice what Jesus taught. They go by the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
They also go by some other books that some people would say teach some very not so nice things. And so it's very complicated. So people are confusing Jews with a race.
Okay.
These are white people. If you know that those were non-white people in the Bible, then
How do you lay
what's the
any claim to the damn
likelihood
land?
that they would all of a sudden just turn white and be
It's not
Europeans?
likely.
It's not likely. You know what I'm saying? So again, Jew is just a culture that people adopt, just like any other culture, like hip hop culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's a global, right? People, oh, I like hip hop. I'm gonna be a hip hop
Mm-hmm.
head. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna dress a certain way. I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
go,
talk a certain way.
yeah, I'm gonna rap. I'm gonna learn how to break dance. I'm gonna do this. I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
be a
eat this.
graffiti
I'm gonna eat
artist
that. I'm
and
gonna
what
have
have you. So
jewelry.
Judaism is a religion,
Mm-hmm.
and it has nothing to do with race. And the Zionists deliberately misinform people, talk about misinformation, and through their collaborations with white people, white so-called Christians that's in power and in these so-called places of authority and what
Mm-hmm.
have you, to just make everybody assume that, oh, these direct descendants of Abraham and Jacob and all that. And but where was you born
Because the
though?
Bible has been whitewashed.
You was born in Poland. You
Mm-hmm.
was born in Romania. You was born in Russia. You was born in Europe. You know what I'm saying? And then you have other Jews like Sephardic Jews, I believe. I'm not sure on the pronunciation. They are Arabs. Those are Arabs
Okay.
who converted to Judaism. Then you got the Ethiopian Jews, and they are mistreated by the Ashkenazi Jews. Ashkenazi simply means that they're from Europe. They are of European descent.
Uh-huh.
So again, Jews are not one homogeneous racial group,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't understand that.
I think I understand.
So, and they think that, well, God, even today, well, God did give those people their land so they can kill all the Palestinian men, women, and children they want to and take their property because God said that's their land. But I don't serve a just God. That's not what Jesus taught me to be. Like you was hinting at earlier, if you think that's your land and somebody stole it from you First of all, that happened thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But would you really pick up arms and go just commit acts of terrorism and kill these people
No, Jesus
and
said
take
don't
their
do
land?
that. If we back on the what would Jesus do? He said
And
don't
then
do
and
that.
then people say there's no contradictions in the Bible. Well, Moses' law said don't kill, steal, don't do all of this stuff. Now that was
Mm-hmm.
Moses came a little bit. No, Moses was before
No, he came down with the
some of those
commandments before they even
genocides and stuff.
entered into the land of Canaan. He
So you
came
see the
down.
contradiction,
Yeah, it is a contradiction.
big glaring
And then like
contradiction.
I like sometimes when I have these intellectual conversations with individuals on the day-to-day basis, just randomly, you know, they'll be like, the Bible is perfect. It's God's word and everything. And like, I asked the question, do you know that, it was created by,
How it was created,
how it was created, how, they put these books together, where do these books come from? Do
right?
you understand, that the Catholic Church has an agenda, this, that, and the third?
Or are you just believing something
But
because you were raised since childhood
yes,
and that's been
and
that sounds
it's
like a
just
cult, don't it?
it does, but my thing is, they're like, so you don't believe that this Bible is God's holy word and everything. I'm not saying that, I don't believe the Bible,
I'm gonna say I don't
but
know.
I do not idolize this.
I'm gonna say I don't know.
Yes.
But if it is, then God is schizophrenic or got multiple personalities because he's described in. How can you
Mhm.
be a God of love and a God of vengeance at the same time?
Mhm.
It just contradicts. And then the teachings of Jesus. So again, I say that your Bible should only include 4 books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's the key to your salvation.
You should open it up and read it. And also, pray before you read it. Pray for discernment and everything. I feel like, a lot of the times,
Pray for the Holy Spirit to give you enlightenment.
yes, I feel like a lot of, everybody is usually worried, but like, oh, what if I read the Bible and I'm a sinner and it just condemns me even more? And the Bible tells us, Jesus teaches tells us not to worry about, the last days and things of that nature. And so, I mean, in summation, I just, I don't revere this to be the only means of connection to God and understanding God. I think that, it is imperfect. But
Man put it together.
man did put it together.
Some of the authors ain't even known.
Which
That
is true, yes.
some of the authors are unknown. So in closing, let's just put it like this. Let's say the Church of Satan, Satan do got a religion, they got a Bible. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say some catastrophe happened, an asteroid wiped out 90% of human beings on Earth, and then they had to rebuild, and it was young people that survived, and they was illiterate, and then they rebuild, and centuries and centuries and centuries later, somebody come across that satanic Bible, and then they'd be like, oh, this is, you know what I'm saying? This is something we should follow, and this is the
Or
divine.
something that fits their agenda.
Right.
Even if when you read you watch that movie with Denzel
Oh, the Book of
Washington, The Book of
Eli.
Eli.
Good example.
Yes. Why did they want that book so damn bad?
Right, because he could use it to control
To
people.
control people, to
Mm-hmm.
control the way you think. That's why I tell people you should be careful about the doctrines that you allow people to teach you.
All right.
Go back and read for yourself and put your own understanding to it.
Well, it's scripture to say, lean not to your own understanding, but to blah, blah, blah. But no,
It
God
don't
gave
be
me
no
a mind
fool.
for a
Yes.
reason to think. And so anyway, so until next time again, if you got any questions or comments about anything we brought up here, please leave them in the comment section. We will address those in an upcoming episode of New Covenant Conversations. Peace and blessings to all.